The excavation site on Kepler 442b had drawn scholars from across 17 star systems. The sword stood embedded in a crystalline pedestal at the heart of the ruins, its blade shimmering with an ethereal blue light that had burned steadily for untold millennia. Dr. Vexthor, the Zentarii lead archaeologist, had measured every conceivable property of the artifact. The blade was composed of an unknown alloy that defied spectral analysis. The pedestal's crystalline structure contained data encoded in gravitational waves, speaking of a civilization that had risen and fallen long before the first Zentarii had learned to harness fire. But most intriguing of all was the inscription circling the pedestal's base, translated painstakingly over 3 standard years. Only the worthy shall bear this burden. 63 species had tried. 63 had failed. The Krell, with their 4 arms and hydraulic musculature capable of lifting starship engines, could not budget. The Phosphine Collective, beings of pure energy who could manipulate matter at the molecular level, found the sword as immovable as a neutron star. Even the ancient Primarchs, the first species to achieve faster-than-light travel, had sent their champion. The sword had not moved. Commander Sarah Chen watched the proceedings from the observation platform, her dark eyes reflecting the sword's azure glow. She was the sole human representative on this expedition, a comparative xenologist assigned to document the cultural responses of different species to the artifact. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community. Barely 2 centuries into their first contact with alien civilizations, they were respected for their adaptability and curiosity, but few considered them remarkable in any physical or mental capacity. "Another failure," chirped Takri, the avian Skrell scientist perched beside her. His feathers ruffled with amusement. "That makes species number 63. The Valtheron warrior looked quite confident. Sarah nodded, watching as the 10-foot-tall Valtheron, encased in powered armor that amplified his already considerable strength, stepped away from the sword. His mandibles clicked in frustration, his reputation as the strongest being in 3 sectors now in question. "Perhaps it's not about strength," Sarah murmured. "Obviously," Takri replied. "The phosphine proved that. It must be some quality we haven't identified. Genetic markers, perhaps. Neural patterns. Gravitational resonance with a specific evolutionary path." Dr. Vexthor's voice boomed across the chamber, translated into a dozen languages simultaneously. "We will adjourn for the solar cycle. Tomorrow, representatives from the crystalline communes will attempt. I'd like to try." The words escaped Sarah's lips before she fully realized she'd spoken them. The chamber fell silent. Hundreds of eyes, optical sensors, and perception organs of every description turned toward her. "Commander Chen," Dr. Vexthor said carefully, his translator rendering his tone as diplomatically as possible. "While we appreciate your enthusiasm, we have followed a systematic approach based on species capabilities. Humans, with respect, rank quite low in most physical parameters. We have species yet to attempt who possess far greater." "I understand," Sarah interrupted gently. "But your inscription says worthy, not strong. Maybe you've been testing the wrong attribute." A ripple of conversation spread through the observers. The Zentarii archaeologist's skin flickered through several colors, indicating deep thought. Finally, he gestured toward the chamber floor. "Very well. The human may make her attempt." Sarah descended the platform stairs, aware of every gaze upon her. She was small by galactic standards, barely 5.5 feet tall, her frame slight compared to the beings surrounding her. Her equipment harness and standard-issue jumpsuit made her look even more insignificant against the grandeur of the ancient chamber. She approached the sword slowly, taking in details she'd only observed from a distance. The blade was roughly 1.5 meters long, the crossguard adorned with symbols that seemed to shift and change as she watched. The grip was wrapped in something that looked like leather, but couldn't possibly be organic after so many millennia. Sarah didn't reach for it immediately. Instead, she knelt beside the pedestal, placing her palm flat against the crystalline surface. "We call ourselves humanity," she said softly, speaking not to the observers but to the sword itself, to whatever ancient intelligence might still linger in this place. "We're not the strongest. We're not the smartest. We're not the oldest or the wisest. We're a young species stumbling through the cosmos, making mistakes, learning as we go." She stood, her hand moving to hover over the grip. "But we're survivors. We've endured ice ages and plagues, wars and extinctions. We've stared into the abyss of our own destruction more times than I can count. And each time we've chosen to step back, to try again, to be better. We carry the weight of our mistakes and the hope of our dreams. We are burdened by our history and driven by our future. Her fingers closed around the grip. If there's one thing humanity knows, it's how to carry a burden we have no right to bear. The sword slid free, the chamber erupted in chaos. Alarms that hadn't sounded in millennia began to chime. The blue light intensified, then shifted, flowing from the blade into Sarah's hands, up her arms, surrounding her in a corona of azure radiance. The symbols on the crossguard locked into a single configuration, and Sarah understood them now, understood what they had always meant. A burden shared is a burden halved. A burden borne alone defines the bearer. The light faded. Sarah stood in the center of the chamber. The ancient sword held easily in both hands, its weight perfectly balanced. She looked up at the hundreds of stunned observers and offered a small, very human smile. Sometimes, she said, it's not about being the best. It's about being willing to carry the weight anyway. Dr. Vexthor's skin had gone completely white, a color Sarah had never seen on his Zentari. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. The translation, we got it wrong. It never said worthy. The actual phrase means one who bears burdens they need not bear, one who carries weight for others. He looked at Sarah with something like awe. Humanity. Your entire species evolved around that concept. Sarah lowered the sword, feeling the thrum of ancient power running through it, feeling the responsibility settling onto her shoulders like a familiar coat. Yes, she said simply, we did. And in that moment, the galaxy learned what it meant to be human.